Katie here from the Queen of Teen Fiction, and it's time to catch you up on the books that I've been reading. So I didn't do a wrap-up video in December because it was Christmas, there was lots going on, and I only read 2.5 books, which is pretty pathetic for me. So I thought I'd leave the wrap up until after January as well so that I could put them together in one video. So there are more books to talk about. So the first book that I read in December is What Light by J. Asher. This book follows a girl named Sierra whose family owns a Christmas tree farm in Oregon. So every year during the Christmas period she moves to the farm. She has a best friend that she sees there every year, and it's like she has two lives basically. She has her life back at home with her normal friends, and then her life up at the farm. The farm is in trouble and the family don't know if they're going to be able to keep it running, so this is potentially Sierra's last Christmas at the farm. And while she's there, typically she meets a boy. I have read books by J. Asher before and absolutely adored them. I love 13 Reasons Why, and I also love The Future of Us as well, which she wrote with Carolyn Mackler. So I had really high hopes for this book. Unfortunately, I didn't like it as much as I wanted to. I know I'm quite iffy about contemporary romance, but usually when it's a Christmas story, I quite enjoy it because a Christmas romance is meant to be cheesy and stuff. So I found myself enjoying Christmas romances more than normal romance, but I just couldn't get into the romance in this book at all. It really felt too insta-love for me. The boy in the book, Caleb, I couldn't see what Sierra saw in him at all, really. He didn't seem that amazing to require her attention straight away, and I also didn't feel the chemistry between them. What I did love about this book was Sierra's relationship with her family and also with her friends as well, because it dealt with a few friendship and family issues, and I found myself much preferring that side of the story rather than the romance, and I feel like I should have been more invested in the romance, but I just wasn't. So it was enjoyable enough if you were looking for a cute, quick Christmas read, but I was expecting a little bit more. The next book that I read in December is another Christmas story, and it is Christmas at the Lilac Cottage by Holly Martin. I read this throughout December with my book club. I've gotta say, this one was not for me. First of all, it's an adult romance. I don't read adult romance. Adult fantasy novels, fine. Adult romance, no. I have yet to find an adult romance that I've actually really enjoyed. Generally, it's something that I just don't get into at all. So I was doubtful going into this book anyway, but I went in with an open mind, thinking that maybe it'd surprise me. It didn't. Yeah. It follows a young woman named Penny. She is renting out her parents' cottage to a man named Henry and his daughter Daisy. At first, Penny doesn't realise that Daisy is his daughter and thinks that it's his wife. So she thinks she's renting their cottage to a couple. Of course she's not. Henry is a single dad and is about to become Penny's love interest. The romance didn't appeal to me whatsoever, neither did the characters. There were several things that really irked me about it as well. There was a group of blonde women in the book that of course were painted as the stereotypical bitchy type characters, and I really hate stories that do that because it's just so stereotypical. There is always a blonde character that's catty, and I just hate it. I've seen it so much in books now, it needs to stop. Also, Penny's young, she's in her 20s, but her life seems to revolve around the fact that she doesn't have a man and that she doesn't have children. And as someone who is in her early 20s and doesn't have a man and does not want children, it annoys me when I see so much focus put on that in books, because there's more to life when you're this age. There's not more to my life. I mean, I don't do anything exciting. But in general, life doesn't have to revolve around those goals. So I just don't like it when books focus on that sort of thing. It doesn't appeal to my interests. This wasn't a Christmas read for me. The next book that I started in December and finished in January is Gilded Cage by Vic James. This is the first book in a trilogy, I believe, and it is set in modern day Britain, but it is an alternative Britain. In this world, there are people who have skill, which means they have sort of magical abilities. They are known as the equals, and they are seen as above everyone else in society. Those without skill common people like you and me, they are forced to do 10 years slave days for the people with skill. So that could mean working for a family who has skill, so you could end up being their servant, or it could mean being put in a workhouse. And this is something that everyone who doesn't have skill has to do. The story mostly follows two siblings called Luke and Abby. Abby, her parents, and their other sister Daisy get sent to work at Kindstone Mansion. They are made to work for the Jardine family, who are very well known in the society, very powerfully magic family. Luke is supposed to go with them, but last minute they find out that he's being sent to a workhouse instead. So the siblings get split up. Abby goes off to this mansion and Luke goes off to this horrible workhouse. I really loved the world within this book. I thought it was so cleverly thought out and it was explained perfectly. Sometimes it can be very confusing when you're thrown into a new world and you've got to get used to a magic system, and there's a lot of politics going on, but I didn't get confused with this one. It's all very clever and it's such an interesting concept as well about society being split that way. The only thing that bothered me about this book was the siblings seeming to fall into the role that I'd expect them to. It was Abby that went to go and work in the mansion with this family, who by the way consist of 3 extremely attractive young men. Not all nice, but still this powerful family of boys. And then the brother, Luke, going to the workhouse and starting to rebel. I felt like that was very stereotypical boy and girl roles. The sister goes off and has a love interest, the boy goes to the workhouse and has to do the dirty work, kind of. Whilst I loved the story, I kind of wish Luke had gone to the mansion and Abby had gone to the workhouse. But the book as it is, I loved anyway. The characters are all really interesting. I adored Luke. I was also really interested in the Jardine family themselves because we don't really get to know too much about them, and there's definitely a lot more to learn. There is a brother called Cillian who is kind of a darker character in this, and we really don't know as much about him as I'd like to. So I'm very excited for the second book to find out what's going on with this family, specifically Cillian. The next book that I read in January is A Quiet Kind of Thunder by Sarah Bernard. I made a video about this book a few weeks ago and I'll leave a link to it down in the description. I took part in a challenge that was related to the story and it was super interesting to do. This book is about a girl named Steffi who has selective mutism. It has affected her life since she was a little girl. She finds it very difficult to speak. Sometimes it is completely impossible for her to communicate at all. Sometimes she can speak, but it's only in situations where she feels comfortable. In this book, she meets a boy named Reese who starts at her 6th form. Reese is deaf, and because of Steffi's mutism, she has learnt a bit of sign language because her uncle thought that it would be useful for her to learn if she can't always use her voice. And because of that, she ends up bonding with Reese, and the two of them end up becoming friends, and eventually it leads on to a romance. I can't tell you how thankful I am that books like this exist, because I've never read a book in which a character has selective mutism before, and I've only ever read about deaf characters who have been minor characters in books. I've never read one that's been a main character before. Creating a story about these two characters was just genius, and it is such a lovely story as well. It helps you learn about the challenges that people who go through these things actually face on a day-to-day basis, and it really made me think about how much we take for granted. Also, Steffi's anxiety within this book is dealt with so brilliantly. I suffer from anxiety myself, and there were moments in this book where I could just completely relate to the thoughts that were going through her head. There is literally just a page of her worries over something seemingly small, and that one page really got to me because it's something that I've done before. Almost the very same thoughts that Steffi was going through. So I really love it when I find a book that portrays anxiety in a realistic way, because unfortunately there are books out there that do seem to romanticize it and make it a cute thing, and it's really not cute. Anyone who deals with it will know how much it affects your day-to-day life. So I just love how real and honest this book was. It helped me learn more as well about selective mutism because it's something that I didn't really know anything about before this book. And one of the most important things that this book has done is made me want to learn some sign language, because it's something that you don't think to learn because you don't need. And I just couldn't help but think about how we learn languages that we don't need all the time, just in case we go to another country. So why not learn some sign language? Just because we don't need it doesn't mean that we won't use that at some point in the future. So this is an incredibly important story, and I'm so thankful that it exists. The next book that I read in January is Margot and Me by Juno Dawson. This was our book club's January read, and out of all of the books that we've read as part of the book club, this one has been my favourite so far. This is about a character called Fliss who moves to her grandmother Margot's farm in Wales. Fliss's mother has had cancer, so they move to the farm after she's recovered so that she can recuperate. Whilst there, Fliss finds Margot's diary from back in the 1940s, and she starts reading it and discovers a lot about Margot's life that she had no idea about beforehand. So this book is set in 1998, but then jumps back to the 1940s for Margot's diary, and I absolutely loved this jump in time, and the fact that the main part of the story is set in 1998 made me extremely nostalgic as well, because it brings up so many things that I remember from being a kid. I also love the 1940s side of it as well, because I love historic stories, especially ones that are set during the war. Margot is an evacuee, so she is sent to Wales back in 1940, so I absolutely adored reading that side of it. This is a book that I don't really want to say too much about because I don't want to spoil it for anyone who wants to read it, but I would highly recommend it. It deals with a lot of different important topics, both back in 1940 and in 1998 as well. Margot is also a character whose attitude is way ahead of her time, and I loved seeing a character who was as open and accepting as Margot was back in 1940. So it's just a really fantastic story, and the characters are great. The last book that I read in January is The Memory Book by Laura Avery. This is about a 17-year-old girl named Sam McCoy. She is diagnosed with a rare form of dementia that affects young people. It's usually diagnosed in children, and they often don't reach the age of 20. Sam is a special case because she's diagnosed as a teenager. Sam is a character who had a plan all mapped out in her head for her future. She's about to graduate from high school, and she's always dreamed of going to New York University. Being diagnosed with this puts a strain on her plans, but she is determined to do things her way and not let this stop her from living her life the way that she wants to. This book was really interesting because the form of dementia that is talked about within it I'd never heard of before, and I love it when books take something that's rare and shine a light on it, because otherwise how would people learn about these things? I also completely adored the attitude within it as well. This isn't a sob story. Sam doesn't really feel sorry for herself. Even when she's going through her most heartbreaking moments, she has this internal strength and determination to carry on. So I really respected that about her character. The thing that disappointed me with this book though was the romance. There is a romantic storyline going on in it, and it does turn into a bit of a love triangle at the end, and I just don't think that this type of book needed to focus on that. It makes me sad that a lot of the books I read that deal with illness and disorders, they often have romance as the main plot, and I just don't think that's necessary, because I'd rather focus on Sam getting through her illness herself with her own determination, rather than having romantic subplots involved. But aside from that, I love the message that this book gives. Even though it is about an illness that will eventually take Sam's life, it manages to be a story of hope. So whilst I didn't enjoy the romance, I still loved the characters, and I loved the story that it was telling. So that is it. They are the books that I read throughout December and January. I really haven't been reading that much because I got into a huge reading slump after Christmas. I'm finding it very hard to get sucked into a book at the moment. I really miss fantasy as well, because I feel like I've been reading a lot of contemporary books lately, and you know, fantasy is my main area, so I really want to get back to it. I feel like I'm more harsh on contemporary books after I've read a lot of them in a row. I think I need time away from them to appreciate them more. So hopefully I will get through more books this month. So please do let me know down in the comments what you've been reading lately. Also, what you plan to read throughout February. Let me know all the bookish things. Thank you guys so much for watching. I will see you next time. Bye!